As we close the curtains for 2023, the countdown has started. There are stories that have proven to be game changers for the continent. Totally unprecedented and groundbreaking are those that you could call the biggest stories for 2022. Let's take a look at some of them very briefly before we leave this review and then join our man who's on standby to speak to us concerning the East African Roundup. Olive, I think one of the biggest stories that we had for 2022, the outgoing here right now, is Kenya. Kenya was really, really big on its elections.
Absolutely. We covered the elections here. Interestingly, I was able to, we worked together in covering the elections this year. It was a keenly contested election because people didn't see how it was going to turn out. Their predictions, interestingly, I had thought, if you had asked me before the election results came out, I had thought that Raila Odinga was going to win the elections because it did seem that he had the popular votes. He seemed to be popular amongst the people. But they went neck to neck, really. And that's how elections are meant to be, where you're not able to see, oh, you can't know from the get-go, this is who is going to win. It was very keenly contested. The IEBC was criticized at different points during the elections because of certain hiccups that they experienced during the elections. But it's so beautiful to see to see them hug, to see Uhuru Kenyatta and
of course, Uhuru Kenyatta.
That's beautiful to see them hug.
I mean, William Ruto's emerges as Kenya's fifth president represented a paradigm shift in the country's politics, by the way. I mean, it was a competitive election. Ruto's campaign was comprised of a mass movement of workers, jobless, peasants, and other hustlers. A campaign that sought to distance itself from the dynasties that have long run Kenya's politics, especially with fingers being pointed at Uhuru Kenyatta. This inauguration was also mind-boggling and blowing at the same time because I mean, you could see the smiles on the faces of, especially of his wife, Ruto's wife. And then you had his vice president who, you know, I remember the live situation where he had to recite all over again. I mean, I think myself and Tula as well were on live during this inauguration too, where recitations had to be taken all over again. So you could understand that when you were in that position, I mean, take a look at the screen. They were all smiling all through like, yes, we did it. But guess what? Ruto is not off the cuffs yet.
Yes.
Because Odinga is still somewhere pressing the buttons.
Right. Speaking of Ruto and Odinga, of course, Ruto was born in a small rural village in Rift Valley. His opponent, Raila Odinga, interestingly, was a former prime minister, the son of the country's vice president. So there's been a long-standing history between both parties, and you would automatically think that people would lean more towards Raila Odinga because it's been generations and generations of being in the leadership of Kenya. Marginalized Kenyans regarded Ruto as the personification of a transformational agenda that centers their plight, defining a contest between hustlers and dynasties. This is, of course, was a journey which has not been the easiest. Ruto's biggest challenge may be overcoming the country's legacy of ethnic politics and building national cohesion in a dire economic situation. Now, one thing that really stood out, of course, was the fact that Ruto, yes, he'd been criticized in recent times, about his 100 days in office. Not just him, but the different governors in the different counties. There were 5 governors recently, according to today's paper, that have been scored really badly, scored really lowly, in terms of their performance in the first 100 days. Ruto inherited a country that was highly indebted, that had a lot of work to do.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it was something that we also have to look at. 2022. Nobody's going to forget this in a hurry. But so far, so good. Ruto is trying his best, trying to keep to his promises, getting women in places or positions like he
did promise. Yeah. Although there have been criticism about that because he did say he was going to get 50% women in his cabinet. 50% of his cabinet was going to be women. And then they're saying, no, you don't have 50% in terms of the current measurement. But he, in the same way that he said 50%, he also did say 2/3, at least 2/3 or something. So there's been mixed reactions to that. But I would say give the man time. There's a lot of work that needs to be done that cannot be overturned in one night. There's so much work that needs to be done in Kenya. And we're hopeful that everybody can put their fingers and their hands together. There's so much fighting that if they would leave the fighting aside and focus on actual governance, there's so much impact that can be done. Just imagine, Joe, that Raila Odinga and Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta all come together, put heads together to see how to take Kenya forward. Imagine the impact that would make, rather than the back and forth and the bickerings here and there.
It baffles me because it never works in Africa. And in a struggle, kind of like many would say you're trying to be prophetic or you're trying to state, but I mean, then again, it's been said that there would be no agreement. So you find it hard when you see it. But anyway, that's one of the biggest stories for 2022. Let's take a look at one more. The Ethiopian government, which has been fighting the Tigray People's Liberation Front since November 2020, accusing the rebel group of terrorism. Well, guess what? Uhuru Kenyatta, after leaving office, Nigeria's former president and military, you could say, ruler as well, Olusegun Obasanjo, and not forgetting too, PhumzileMlambo-Ngcuka served on this mediating panel as well. They all came together, and an offer which was accepted by Ethiopia with the country's national security advisor, Redwan Hussein, saying that the talks are in line with the principled position regarding the peaceful resolution of the conflict and the need to have the talks without preconditions. This morning, we heard that the talks are still ongoing, wars have ceased, and don't forget to yesterday, celebrations, as you saw it in the news, people flew for the first time, seeing your loved ones. You know, Ethiopian Airlines has started flying into Tigray and out. This is what we can say one of the biggest stories for 2022, Olive.
Absolutely. I mean, the Ethiopia-Tigray crisis had so much damage left in its path. A lot of there was hunger. The people of Tigray were in dire hunger. There were rapes that had happened. Lots of women had been raped, sexually abused. The death toll was on the rise. There wasn't peace and security. And even when this peace accord was being signed, there were concerns if this was going to hold, because this is not the first time we've had a ceasefire agreement that never really held. And after a few days, everything is back to status quo. So it's very heartwarming. It's exciting to see that this one is actually holding and that they're doing everything that they can. I mean, this man is he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. So it'd be great to see him restore peace to the region. So we're certainly rooting for the people of the people of Ethiopia and Tigray.